And it strikes me that the obvious ones that some people maybe will think are my obstacles were being in a segregated setting in Memphis, Tennessee. I grew up in all Black schools, and I lived in deep poverty. I mean, I really did live in deep poverty. When I was a kid, I had one pair of shoes, and if it got a hole in it, we just put cardboard in it so that your foot didn't touch the ground. And I wore clothes that oftentimes my mother made, and we all really did live in these little teeny houses where all the children slept in one room. And but I would get up and go read. But at any rate, so you could look at that as an obstacle, but actually, what was more of an obstacle for me was that as a little Black girl, at first it was the children calling me Black and ugly. And so that bothered me, but I found a solution to that. So we can talk about that when we talk about overcoming. So that, but the thing I think that I had to overcome actually was the poverty and the shame of being a poor kid and feeling not good enough.
Hey everybody, I'm back with another episode of Solid Success Stories. And today I have a unique honor and privilege, pleasure of speaking with my friend. I'm so glad I can say that, my friend, Dr. Rosie Phillips Davis. Dr. Rosie Phillips Davis. And that's important that she's Davis, because we talked about that story, and I think she'll share a little bit about that story too. She was Dr. Bingham to me for years at the University of Memphis as the Vice President of Student Affairs. So over 20 years, I guess 25 years, I've known this amazing woman. And today she is a professional in counseling psychology at the University of Memphis. And so she stepped down from her vice president role, and she is still a professor, still giving back to the University of Memphis, still pouring into the students. And Dr. Davis is being an example for all students, but especially for me, what I saw in her is a woman who looked like me and showed me what I could be. As a little Black girl at the University of Memphis, I saw this woman in this powerful position, and it showed me what I could do. So that's a little bit about Dr. Davis. Dr. Davis, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Okay, thank you, Summer. And really, feel free if Dr. Bingham slips out. I'm not going to be offended in the least, because that's what a lot of people still call me, and I answer to it. And first, let me say, though, to hear you say that I was an example for you is surprising to me in some ways, because I can remember your being in my office and my talking to you and being so impressed with you. And I have continued to be impressed with you. And I remember the first time I read your book. And so, one of the things that I love to do, I love interacting with people, and I love students a lot. And I'm always feeling like I get more than I give. But anyway, a little bit about me. So I'm a Memphian. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. I was not born here. I was born in a hospital in Mississippi. And I say in a hospital because a lot of people born back during the time I did, Black people were not, but I was. I am the daughter of sharecroppers. We lived on a plantation. Can you believe that? I lived on a plantation. Yep, where we actually pumped the water out of the ground, and we dug up the vegetables out of the ground. I mean, the sweet potatoes and all of those things. And my parents, and actually the children too, picked and chopped cotton. And then something happened that my father ran away. He was accused, I never heard him say that, accused of rape. I don't know if that's true or not. I just know that what I saw as a little girl, my mother was a tall, very proud looking woman. And even as a little kid, then I must have been 4 or 5 years old, I remember a white sheriff deputy, and we're in Mississippi on a plantation, coming and talking to her about my father. and he talked to her so badly. And
Mm.
I don't even remember the conversation, but I do remember when he left, her leaning her hand on an ice box. We didn't have a refrigerator. We had ice where people delivered the ice to you, and you put it in an ice box, and tears rolling down her face. And I only saw my mother cry until she, well into old age, twice. And that was one of the times that I saw her cry. So we moved to Memphis, Tennessee, and we moved in with my father's mother. I called her Miss Callie. We always called her Miss Callie until she was never grandma or granny or any of those. She was Miss Callie. So we moved in with her, and I lived over on Exchange Street until and that's in North Memphis. Some people will know where that, I think it was called the Memphis Technology Center or something over
Okay.
like Alabama, and right over there. I lived in that area until I was about between 10 and 12. And then we moved to an area of the city called Smoky City. And that's where I grew up as a teenager and went to Manassas High School, Manassas Tigers. And while I was in school, I was a smart little kid. So I got scholarships to go to college. And then I was recruited though by in person Elmhurst College at the time. I had scholarships to everywhere because it was at a time when they were trying to desegregate schools in the Northeast and the Midwest. And so I had scholarships everywhere. Vanderbilt, not Memphis State though, they never even looked my way, but Vanderbilt, Mount Holyoke, you know, Cornell, University of Chicago. But the person at Elmhurst came and talked to me personally, made it feel like I was going to go to paradise if I went to school there. And so I went to Elmhurst, and two of my friends from Manassas also went. And one of them I am still really good friends with now, and one died. But we went there, and then two of us went to Ohio State. He went to law school. I went and got my master's and my doctorate there. And when I left there, I worked for a while as an assistant professor at Ohio Dominican College. Then I went to University of Florida and worked in the counseling center. And we can talk about stories about why those changes if we ever get to it. But let me go back and fill in that I'm one of 12. My two older siblings, two older brothers, two older sisters two were my father's children, two were my dad's children. I'm their first child.
Okay.
Ones that came under me, and they're the ones that I bossed around as a little bossy child.
We got something in common, I think.
Oh yeah, I felt responsible for them, and so I bossed them around. And they're all very important to me. The four older ones are deceased, and one of the younger ones is deceased. So there's 7 of us, and so there are 4 sisters. We still hang out. Let's see. So, and they were there to support me, always supported me. My father was a part of the sanitation strike in 1968 when Dr. King was here. I was a freshman in college, and one of my sisters, Georgia, who's now deceased, she used to send me like $10 now and then to help out because my parents never were able to. But at any rate, but I always treasure her. I clean houses I cleaned the white woman's house, and I sent money home back to them. So my first job out of my doctorate was as an assistant professor, but and so I moved to Florida to be on the staff as a staff psychologist, and I loved that job. I really did. I had to schedule myself off one night a week because I had to work during the day and do all the outreach and all the groups because I just loved the work. I started a group for Black women. And did a conference called Black Women Against the Odds. I just loved it. And then the guy who was the second director that I had made me an associate director, and I was beginning to get homesick. So John, my husband that I met there, and he's my second husband, I got married when I was in graduate school at Ohio State. And see, I just forgot all about that, but I did get married. And that's the struggle with Bingham, is because I married Bingham in graduate school. had one article published under the name Bingham. So kept that name for a bunch of years, but I met my husband, John Davis, in Florida. And when I was thinking about going home back to Memphis, he actually then got a job at the VA. So he was moving to Memphis. And we made an agreement that I would look for a job in Memphis. And if I didn't get a job within a year, he would move back to Gainesville. He's a physician assistant, so he was very mobile. Well, the director of the counseling center at that time, called the Center for Student Development, came open at Memphis State University. And so I applied for that job. And after a little bit of wrangling, got the job. And I moved to be with my husband, moved back home because my husband was here. And just have had a fabulous career at Memphis. And I loved being director of the counseling center. It was a good combination. I could teach, I could see clients. I started an AP accredited internship program because the then Vice President Don Carson wanted me to. And so I got to do that. I got to present here and there, do all kinds of things. Well,
so let me say this. So this week you have some amazing stories, and I want to get into your story. So before we go into that, though, you're also a mom.
I am. I had my baby when I was in Florida, Akil. And Akil is the reason. Well, not the reason. I had Akil because I had a severe case of endometriosis, and the doctor gave me a choice. I have a hysterectomy or have a baby. You know, endometriosis at my age, I was like 33 or so. They call it a career woman's disease because oftentimes women delay having babies and are more likely to develop endometriosis.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so John and I were not married at the time, but we decided to have Akil anyway. And I could decide on the baby. I couldn't decide on the marriage because I'd been married and I didn't want to do it again. But for some reason, once he got that job in Memphis, 3 weeks later, we got married. And so, and so I said, why did we get married? She said, I don't know. I think it was a loose end. So that was my romantic marriage. It was a great wedding. All my friends participated. We did it in 3 weeks and we just threw it together and everybody contributed. It was not expensive. Everybody helped out. All my girlfriends in Florida helped out.
And now you've been married, what, over 40 years? What did you say? How long you've been married?
I haven't been actually married 40 years. We've been, if we had time, I'd tell you the story of how we became a monogamous couple. But we have been a monogamous couple for about 41 years. We've actually been married a little over 38 years. Yeah.
Which is amazing. That's so beautiful. Okay, so let's get into all these great stories that you have to tell.
Okay.
So, Dr. Davis, in this program, you're proud of me, I said Dr. Davis. In this program, I have what I call the So What Success System. Yeah. It's my belief that if someone, and I know I really believe you'll agree with this. If someone can learn how to overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate their choices, they can have so what success. And that is success no matter what they go through in life, no matter what circumstances they're born into, no matter what they deal with, they can still be successful if they can do those things. And Dr. Bingham, Dr. Davis, you are a So What Success woman. I know quite a bit about your story and quite a bit about your journey. And I've seen you demonstrate So What Success. Talk to us a little bit about some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome in your life.
Okay. And so one of the things, though, that I will add to that is that I do believe in purpose and callings. And so I believe in answering a call. And I believe if I answer my calling, I'll be successful. So when I think about obstacles that I face, and I looked at that question, I said, I'm not going to practice before, and I'm going to see what I say. And it strikes me that the obvious ones that some people maybe will think of my obstacles were being in a segregated setting in Memphis, Tennessee. I grew up in all Black schools and I lived in deep poverty. I mean, I really did live in deep poverty. When I was a kid, I had one pair of shoes, and if it got a hole in it, we just put cardboard in it so that your foot didn't touch the ground. And I wore clothes that oftentimes my mother made, and we all really did live in these little teeny houses where all the children slept in one room. And but I would get up and go read. But at any rate, so you could look at that as an obstacle, but actually, I what was more of an obstacle for me was that as a little Black girl, at first it was the children calling me Black and ugly. And so that bothered me, but I found a solution to that. So we can talk about that when we talk about overcoming. Um, so that, but the thing I think that I had to overcome actually was the poverty and the shame of being a poor kid and feeling not good enough. So that would be one of the ones that I had to overcome. We could say I had to overcome money, but I got scholarships and whatnot. So I didn't overcome that. I have to overcome the anxiety of not feeling good enough or smart enough, or fear. Overcoming fear is what I think is an obstacle. So for me, the things that one might view as obstacles, it felt like I would deal with those head on. I had to deal with the obstacle of living in a household where my father, he provided for us, but he was a functioning alcoholic, and he was violent and abusive toward my mother, and she would run away, and I would feel abandoned. I had to get over feeling abandoned, even though my father, when he would cook for us, and he actually took care of us. He was way better when she had gone away than he was there. And I think he was the man, the deacon of the church that she had married. He'd become that when she ran away, but when she came back, then he would get into those. So as a little girl, it was overcoming feeling abandoned. So those are kind of the obstacles that I have overcome.
Talk about how some of the ways that you overcame some of those obstacles. What were some of the things that you did to get through those things?
Okay, so I'll tell you about the little girl first, and actually I'm going to give this in a speech. I just wrote this talk because I'm going to get an award at APA, and so
congratulations.
Thank you. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award, one I never thought I'd get from
awesome
the Leona Tyler Award. And so one of the punishments that you get for getting an award is that you have to give a talk. And so I struggle because it's that inadequacy, that feeling of not being good enough, it still creeps up. And so just having to write a good enough. And then finally, I prayed about it and said, go write a bad speech. So one of the things I talked about is this little girl. And so that sense of abandonment, what that little girl did was sitting on the concrete steps to lead up to the house where they ran away to the family. Now grandmother had moved out, and it was the family living in this little 3-room house, and it had concrete steps, 3 of them. And that little girl sitting on the top of those concrete steps one time when her mom had run away, and making a decision. I'm not going to love anybody enough ever again to hurt this much of the cure that they left. And so she sealed her heart. And that enabled her to keep going and keep going and keep going, because she just went, the no fear of going to college. And the amazing thing about sealing off a heart, or building a wall around my heart at that early age, is I forgot about it. So when I was a teenager and girls would go, over these songs and stuff, I had no idea what they were talking about. I said, I hope one day I feel like that, or going to college and not missing anybody. I think about being afraid to go, that may have interfered, but I didn't feel those feelings. The other thing was overcoming the children calling me black and ugly. Woo, you're so black and ugly. But I learned to read. I read everything. I read all the time. Even my daddy that garbage man daddy man brought me home a bag of books. I was between 10
Mm.
and 12. Bag of books. And they all had black wrappers on. And I love to tell the story to children. I said, why do you think they had the black wrappers on? They said, to keep the books clean. Actually, it was pornography. It was horrible pornography. I mean, everything, bestiality, you name it. Can you imagine this little kid? I'm reading all of it. I read everything, but here's what reading did for me. So I began to imagine when people call me black and ugly, that I'd get $1 for every time they call me black and ugly. And so at the end of the week, I would imagine, ooh, I could buy me a pair of shoes. And after a while, it became, let's see how many times I can have somebody call me black and ugly so I can see what else I can buy. All in my imagination.
I love that. I love that. Okay, go ahead. That moves me. It moves me from somebody who was bullied to and had my own coping mechanisms. But I think that is so beautiful that you did that. But go ahead.
Well, that's part of the, and so I could imagine, and so I would imagine things, and so I imagined growing up. And this was my aspiration because I really didn't know anything about careers. I imagined, ooh, I could move to New York, and then this was my fantasy. Move to New York, and there'll be these tall buildings, and one day I'll probably be a secretary, and I'm coming back from lunch, and I'm rushing back, and I turn the corner, and this guy is rushing back, and we bump into each other and fall in love.
I love it. I love it.
I never did go to New York and bump into anybody, but
You fall in love.
Yeah, and I didn't know anything about love because it's just my imagination, because I didn't feel those things. I felt fear, I felt shame, I felt worry about being a poor kid, going to college, and whether or not I'd have the clothes to fit in. I mean, when I was in high school, my prom dress was from another girl at the school who had parents that, to me, they were kind of rich. I imagine they were probably middle class, teachers and whatnot. And the teachers picked the guy. They had the valedictorian and me go to the senior prom together, So I think the other things that helped me overcome, I always had a lot of support because, as I said, I was a smart little girl, and people like smart little children, and I was quiet. But one is my imagination. It is having an imagination to imagine something different from the life that you had. I think that was my sustaining thing, imagining something could be different.
I love it. And so you said two of the key terms from one of my favorite books, which is Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. So I read that book every year. I'm actually part of a mastermind where we digest the book, but decision and the power of decision. And you talked about how you made a decision. And then you talked about imagination and the power of your imagination, and how going from this little girl that's being bullied and called all these mean things in the poverty situation that you were in, the family situation, to being what I know of you today in the life that you have today. It's a beautiful transition, but I do think that those two phrases, decision and imagination, and the beauty of you embracing both and how it changed everything. Well, the second part of the So What Success system is eliminating excuses. And so you dealt with a lot as a young person, a lot of obstacles and we all do, right? And we all will face obstacles, and we can also make excuses for not overcoming those obstacles, but you did. Talk about some of the excuses that you had to eliminate and just how you eliminate those excuses so that you could keep moving forward.
Well, I guess the first obvious one is using poverty as an excuse. I mean, it's and feeling not good enough. And so I think the one that I probably struggle with now is it's an interesting excuse of perfection. And that is, I can't do it well enough because I can't make it perfect. And I'm forever having to say, don't make it perfect. But that is the thing, is that it has to be perfect. And it ties in with, I think, a sense of feeling good enough and legitimate enough. And so using those things to hide behind them so that I don't put myself at risk. And so I guess it's eliminating the excuse of it has to be perfect would be one of the ones. Eliminating the excuse of I'm not smart enough. I don't know enough to do that. Or let's see, other excuses I'll use for things would be, I don't feel like doing that, or it's too far, or they aren't gonna like it anyway, or so those conversations that I will have with myself, I think are the ones that I have to get over those and say, nah, mm-mm. And so, of course, I use the power of prayer and faith, uh, and to get over it. But yeah, those are some of the excuses. I probably have some others, but even when I looked at your list of questions, I was thinking, what excuse? What excuse what do I put up as excuses? I, I don't want to read that long book. I don't want to write that long paper. Take too much time. I don't know enough about statistics. So it's all about things like that.
How do you move past those excuses? What are some of the practices that you use to, because obviously you can make those excuses and maybe have, but you have definitely pushed past them. You read, you make time, you work, you've done all those things in spite of those excuses. What are some of the tricks maybe that you use to get past those excuses?
Well, some of it is that I talk to myself about it. I'll tell myself it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, the talk that I'm going to give at APA, told myself, well, go write a horrible talk then. Just write a terrible talk then. Don't make it good. Just write it as badly as you can. And so if I say I can write it as badly as I can, then it gets me writing. And then it'll turn out just fine. But just to eliminate that, just don't be perfect. The other things that I would do though, when I was director of the counseling center, and honestly, I had to keep up with reading a lot of material. I actually had a staff person who loved to read books. I like fiction. She liked reading real books. And I would say, okay, Pam, you read this and give me the executive summary. So it's using other people and their skills to help me so that I don't have to do everything. And that's what I have to remind myself all the time, is that I don't have to know everything or do everything. And I turn to other people. And I remind myself that almost all human beings think something about themselves is that they're not good enough in some way, or they don't know enough, or and I remind myself that I'm just like everybody else, that I'm no different, I'm no better, no worse. And so I use making myself a normal, average human being to help myself to know that I'm okay, because I'm generous like that to other people. So I tell myself, why don't you give that kind of grace to yourself? You really are fine. You don't have to be perfect. You know, your body doesn't have to be perfect. It's fine. It's good. And so it's the talking to myself to overcome those things and then, so if I write, so what I did with that terrible speech I wrote, I read and I said, oh, that sounds pretty good. So then I call up a friend and say, listen to this. And then she can say, oh, that's good. So then it affirms that it's good. And so I think just putting it out there and letting
Yeah. So immediately I was thinking self-talk, and then that's exactly what you began to answer. It is self-talk, and the conversation that you have with yourself and what you start to tell yourself. And then you talked about perfection. For me, I always have to remind myself of that, because that is one of my probably my greatest struggles, is what you said, is trying to make sure things are perfect. But I tell myself almost every single day, done is better than perfect. Because there are so many things that I haven't done or don't get done because I'm stifled by trying to make it perfect. And so I've been able to get so much more done by saying done is better than perfect. It is done. And I think about you, Dr. Davis. you couldn't write a horrible speech if you tried to. So
I don't know about that. I don't know about but the other part is the talking to yourself and then the action. And here's the other thing. One of the things that I would tell my son all the time that he grew to like is that God made you whole and perfect. That does not mean that you don't have things to do, but nobody needs us to be whatever that image of whole and perfect is, because then we wouldn't be human. So we're already whole and perfect, so you don't have to worry about that. Just go ahead and be you.
Yep.
And that is good enough.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Well, the third component of the So What Success system is calculating choices. Yeah. And so obviously throughout your life, you've made a lot of personal and professional choices that got you to where you are today. Talk about some of those choices.
And some of them are happenstance and blessings. I'm telling you.
I understand.
I'm telling you, Summer. I think it's just, I really do believe in answering calls. So, okay, so going to, so making decisions to do well in school, and that wasn't really, I learned reading before I went to school. So making a choice to read and to be okay with reading and imagining. Then going to school, making a choice based on, I don't know, just feeling like it'll be a good fit for me. Making a choice about what to major in. I didn't know what to major in, and I didn't do a good. Well, what am I going to do then? And he said, what do you like to do? I said, I like to help people. He said, well, you could major in sociology. I said, well, okay. I majored in, and so I took a class, and I said, it's boring. And he said, don't worry, it'll get better in your upper division classes. So I tell people I graduated bored. So my choice to just go along with what somebody said didn't serve me well in terms of having, but I had fun at college. I still had fun. I would go out and party, and so I had a good time at college. I had a room to myself.
Did you pledge your sorority in college?
I did not. I came along, we didn't have sororities on campus. And actually, one of the things that we did was there were a group of Black girls and white girls who were going to have a sorority. We didn't know the racism and divisions at that time. And so we were all planning, we were meeting. And then one day we realized the white girls had started a sorority. We were shocked. We didn't know the college had to have been involved in that. We didn't know any better. We were freshmen. And so I remember one of the things that struck me. So we were having a discussion with these white girls and fighting and arguing in the student union about what had happened. And one of my other girlfriends who was Black came in, flung the door open, and she said, y'all in here talking to these hunkies, and they done shot Dr. King. That was the day that they killed Martin Luther King. And that blew up. And so that turned me into Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud, and the natural hair and all of that. And I was opposed to sororities and fraternities. I said, I am not Greek, I'm African. So no, ma'am, I was too, I was too one of those people. I didn't pledge the sorority until when I graduated and went to, I worked first, and then I went to graduate school. And all of those Afrocentric organizations would disappear. And Delta Sigma Theta remained. And the Deltas in Columbus, Ohio were doing the kinds of things that I wanted to do. In fact, they were so social justice, public service oriented. They didn't even have that annual ball that Deltas had. And so I pledged when I was in graduate school, 1970.
Okay, and so that was one of the choices that you made. And talk about some of the other choices. I think kind of interrupted you, but talk about some of the other choices.
Okay. Going to Ohio State was a great choice because, and I went there because a woman who worked at Elmhurst suggested it was a good place to go. And since I'd wanted to do counseling and I wanted to be a high school guidance counselor, I could go and get a master's degree. And so I didn't for real know what I was doing, but nevertheless, I applied to schools and I went to Ohio State. And while at Ohio State, I met my two or three very dear friends. But while I was working on my master's, I was having a good time still. I always managed, Summer, to party on the weekend. I work hard during the week, party on the weekend.
I love it. That's a balance.
think of it as balance. I just like to dance. But at any rate,
Love it.
while I was in my master's program, one of my counseling psych professors, for some reason, I'd taken most of my classes in counseling. He says, Rosie, you would make a good psychologist. You should apply to the counseling psychology program. Have your file sent over from education, and then come and talk to me about how to complete the application. I had my file sent over. I did not go and talk to him, but I was supposed to graduate in December. I got a letter from the counseling psych program, said contingent upon completing your master's, you've been admitted into the doctoral program. So I finished my master's in December, and I was not ready to go to work. So I just kept going to school. So it was a decision to keep going to school because I wasn't ready to go to work, but keep going to school. That eventually I was done taking classes and ready to take my comprehensive exams. And I said, wow, I guess I'm going to be a psychologist. So that was the choice I made. The choice I made also in graduate school that was life-changing for me was to get married. Bingham, that's who you know. I married Bingham, and I married Bingham because I accidentally got pregnant. It was not intentional like I did with Davis. I accidentally. And we were, you were supposed to do the right thing back in those days. And so I married Bingham, but it was just not a marriage that worked. I think he didn't love me, and I'm comfortable that I didn't love him. We were nice people.
Mm-hmm.
So we got married, but it was not a good marriage. It was not good at all. And then I'm really not going into all the details about that. If anybody ever hears me talk, want to know about it, I will tell them. But
We can have another conversation because I'm intrigued.
Yeah, we can do that. But then when I had a very good friend in graduate school, and he and I would play a lot, and so we'd do audacious things together. And one of the audacious things I did at a conference one time was ask this guy at the University of Florida who was presenting. I stood up because everybody, and I said, well, could you just go out to lunch with me and then we can have a discussion? I think he thought I was flirting with him, but for real, I really wanted to ask him questions and I wasn't getting them in. But as a result of meeting him, he encouraged me to apply for this job at the Counseling Center at the University of Florida. And I really and truly have been an assistant professor. That whole thing about being good enough and prepared enough and all of those things, I studied so much and tried to be so prepared for when I went to class to lecture that I was making myself miserable. And I wasn't sure I was a good psychologist. So I applied for the job at the University of Florida to be a real psychologist. And that I loved. And so that was, what was I, making decisions? Is that what I'm talking about? Making choices.
Yes.
I made a choice to go to Florida, and that was where I found my passion. And that was as a therapist, as a psychologist. And so, and then when I was there, I met John Davis. And John Davis and I think I mentioned, had that baby, and we moved to Memphis, and I was director of the counseling center, and I love that job. And so becoming an assistant vice president, though, here's the way this discussion was made. So the then vice president said, Lane Rollins was the president of Memphis State. He's the one who facilitated the change to University of Memphis. Said that Don Carson had too many direct reports and he should create 2 assistant vice presidencies. So Dr. Carson asked me, was I interested? And I said, no, not really, because I love my job. And he says, well, if you don't apply and somebody that you don't want to be your supervisor will be your supervisor. So I had a person that I did not want supervising me anymore. So I said, uh-oh. And I asked my husband, well, how would you feel if I get this job and hate it and have to leave in a year? Or if I don't apply for it and hate being supervised by that individual and have to leave in a year? He said, I don't care where we go, do whatever you want. So I decided to go ahead and apply for the job as an assistant vice president. Got that job, never loved it. I did it for 9 years, but I didn't love it. But I created a team, I learned a lot. And then when my son graduated, and my son, I did try out for a job to see if I would like being a vice president. My son, who's in 10th grade, said, Mom, you can take that job if you want, but I'm not moving. I have too many important things here to do. Well, son, here's what. I will not apply for another job until you graduate from high school. And so the year that he graduated is the year that I started applying to be a vice president. And it came down to two jobs, one at Arizona State and one at the University of Memphis. And honestly, the voice of God said that you will be vice president of student affairs at the University of Memphis on whatever that date was. And I only witnessed that to one person. We had some bumps in the road. The president and I at the time, Shirley Raines, making a decision about going. And we had some problems with negotiating the salary because I did decide, Summer, what my lowest salary that I was willing to take. And she offered me $20,000 below that.
Mm.
Whatever, it was way too little. And I said, I just can't do it. I'll remain an assistant vice president. And I told her, so now you need to know that Arizona State wants me to come for an interview tomorrow. She says, well, you go do whatever is best for you and your family. So I called Arizona State. I was always straight up with them. I always told the truth. I was on the plane the next day and she was calling me. I also told her I wanted tenure. But so it's important to me to think ahead about what I need and want in order to be effective. And the reason that I needed tenure in the job was because the vice president for student affairs is responsible for all student behavior. They get punished for the bad student behavior, but not rewarded for the good student behavior. So I knew that I had to be on an even playing field as I could with the other vice president, the provost, the athletic director, all of those people. I need to be able to speak my word, speak my mind, lobby for students as much as I could, and not get fired. So that's what I did. So I made that decision, the decision to get married, the decision to come back here, and family was an overriding consideration for moving back to Memphis. And then all of the other things that oh Lordy, it's always a decision, isn't it? It's always, I'm aware of your time, so please feel free to.
No, I love it. So I'm totally into the whole conversation. I'm taking away so many points from it too. And probably your last point really had me thinking about the people who will watch this and understanding the importance of knowing your value.
Yeah.
Knowing your value and knowing, what you're worth and what the whole your life experiences, your professional experience, your academic experience, and what it's worth, and not settling. And I think you also demonstrated, not settling in your personal life too. And again, knowing your value and knowing what's important to you, and also knowing the work and the effort that you're going to have to put forward, and that, what it's worth. Yeah. So you said a whole lot, but that was the main takeaway I just took away from what you just said. So Dr. Davis, you have demonstrated that you know how to overcome obstacles, eliminate excuses, and calculate choices to be successful in spite of everything that you've gone through in your life. You are successful, but what is your personal definition of success?
Well, now you've heard me say throughout is honestly answering the call. I'm a woman of faith, and so I believe in responding to the call. So that for me, I think if I have joy, I do like to have a base level of physical comfort. I want to live in a place that's comfortable enough. I don't need extravagant, but I like for it to be comfortable. So I want to make enough money to be reasonably comfortable. I want to make sure that I can help minimally my family members. I feel really good when I can be helpful to other people. I feel really good when I can be the wind beneath wings. I think I really like seeing people soar. So if I can help somebody soar, I feel successful. I like getting things done. So for me, it is the sense of getting something done. So for example, when I became the vice president for student affairs, they told me that they were going to renovate our old university center and that it was going to cost $20 million. and they would still have to tear it down in 10 years. And I'm going. And students have to pay for this $20 million structure, that a renovation that won't fix all the problems, and that you would tear down in 10 years. And then we got to have them buy a new building. I said, okay, this doesn't make any sense to me. So I got the president to let me ask students, can you go ahead and go for the new building now? And that was what, so I like seeing that structure over there. I will never get any credit for that university center being there. And it actually is now named the Maxine Smith.
Yes.
Yeah. It will never have Rosie, Bingham, or Davis on it anywhere. But that, I love seeing that change. I love seeing Honors Hall and a new university. And I even asked the students to vote for that bridge and the recreation center. It is this, and the green field, we have a green field on that campus that the students were out there boycotting. They wanted to get student money, have us levy a fee on students, and send that money to TVA. So what I did as a compromise, I said, how about if we, I think all these students and sending money to $1 billion company, I don't think so, but how about if we do this? We send the first round of money to TVA, and then after that, it goes toward making a green campus. And that's how we got Tiger Blue Goes Green, because of negotiating with those students. So when I look out and see a garden, for me, that's success. When I can write a piece that makes a difference, that's success for me. It is making a difference in the world, I think. And when I can see it, so making a difference, getting rewarded for it financially and spiritually and psychologically, I think that's success for me.
I think that's beautiful. And Dr. Davis, you talk about the contributions you made at the university, and a lot of them, yeah, I didn't know. And you just briefly mentioned a few I didn't know. I know you've done amazing things, but a lot of those specific things, no, I didn't know. And so, and a lot of other students who adore you and respect you did not know. But we still reap the benefits, and students today at the University of Memphis still reap the benefits of that. But also, when I think about for you with success, and what you don't know or won't ever fully know is the impact that you've had on students who don't even necessarily know all the contributions that you made. And me being one of those students. And so I think about all of the other students that I know that I'm in contact with, and the countless ones that I'm not in contact with, that I know you've made a lasting impact on us and our lives, and all that we will do. And so that's success too. You've definitely been successful in that way. And again, whether you'll ever fully know that or not, definitely that. One last question for you.
Well, I'm gonna tell you 2 more successes, and then you can tell me. So
go for it.
Because I thought I haven't mentioned anything about the American Psychological Association and being involved in that. And the American Psychological Association has like 130,000 members around the world. But at any rate, so it's also divided into divisions. So counseling psychology is my division, my home division, and then division 45, that's ethnic, and then 35 is women. But anyway, I became president of the Society of Counseling Psychology, Division 17, back in 1999. And I ran to be president because that division was formed in 1946. So they never had a person of color as president. Presidents are president-elect 1 year, president 1 year, and then past president. They never had a person of color. And so I decided to run, not to win, but to break that thing of not having. And so I became that president, to my big old surprise. And I think that has had an impact. We've had many since then. And then running for president of the American Psychological Association. Now we had an Asian woman run who didn't win. We'd had one of my dear friends as a Latina woman, Melba Vasquez, running. And then I ran as the first Black woman to run. And I didn't win the first time, didn't even want to win. So then a Black woman did run the year and got elected. Then I followed her as the second Black woman. And what I did was focus on poverty, and I got to talk all around the world about poverty. And I know some people began to start some programs, and some people said they rejoined APA because of that. And also APA at that time, the governance was a little fractured, and I think I have to provide healing. And then the last thing on our campus that I'm really proud of is forming Black Scholars Unlimited.
So I didn't even know that. And I was a part of Black Scholars Unlimited. Well, first of all, let me say that congratulations on all you've done with APA. And I followed that journey on Facebook. And I was like, yeah, keep representing for us, Dr. Bingham Davis, Dr. Davis.
Yeah. I ran as Bingham, and I told him, I said, I'm gonna run as Bingham because that's how people know me, but I'm serving as Davis.
I love it. And I was super proud of you. Super proud of you. And again, for me, that representation just matters. That representation matters, and to show people what's possible. And I like too, even your mindset behind it was not necessarily for the position, but to open the door, and to show people the possibilities of a person of color, somebody different, doing something different. And it was beautiful. I watched that. And I was honored to be, I still remember my Black Scholars Unlimited induction. Yeah. I didn't know that you created it, but I remember being so honored to be a part of it. So it's so many things that you have done, and the doors that you've opened for people that, again, a lot of people won't even know that you did it. A lot of people won't even know.
The Black Scholar story, and I'll be really quick.
Yeah, I don't have to be quick. We're talking. Go for it.
So when I came to that campus, I came in 1985, and what was happening at that old university center, Black students would play cards all day. And if you got up to go to class, they would call you an Uncle Tom. And so we had to solve the problem. And I thought, what if we create an organization where you have to be smart to get into it? I got the backing from the president. We used people's families and the church. And I called together a group of students and say, how would you like to form an organization that does it? And they were hungry for it. And they agreed with it. But we had to have the GPA at a 2.8 because we couldn't go higher than a 2.8. We didn't have enough people to be in the organization. And so we started it. And so this is so different from when the Luther McClellans of the world and Bertha Looney, those people formed this thing, but we had gotten off track. So we moved the chairs, the vice president moved the tables and things, so there's no place to sit. When we started this organization, you had to be in school for one semester, make a high enough GPA to be recruited to Black Scholars Unlimited. And actually, at one point, people were getting disgruntled, the students were, and I was saying, what is the problem? And they said, there are people in here who don't have the GPA. And so it became important to students that we made. Now it moved to a 3.0, but I don't know what it is. It's probably still a 3.0, which is fine. And the students, though, became invested. Now, if you're on that campus, there's no way anybody would ever think that it's a Tom to go, an Uncle Tom to go to class. So, yeah.
And even in 1997, when I became a part, it might have been 98, probably was 98, when I became a part of Black Scholars Unlimited, we were proud. Yeah. We were honored. We were honored to be a part of that. So yeah. Thank you. Okay, this is the last question. This has been a great conversation. Last question. And you've given lots of advice, the whole conversation. But what's one piece of advice that you would leave with someone watching this who wants to be successful, however they define success, but they face challenges in life? What's one piece of advice you would give?
Well, I probably don't have one piece, but I will, I always start with faith and answering the call. But then I would say, be radically yourself and go on anyway. No matter what the challenges are, go on anyway. Courage is not being brave, it's going on in spite of your fears. So just go on anyway. Be radically who you are, because that's good enough. And don't be afraid of the work. Just do it. Just go ahead and go on anyway in spite of it all.
Okay, that made me cry. I love it. That was beautiful, and that was great advice. And it's advice that I feel like that I've taken in my own life, and People like you make it easy to do just that. Be radically yourself and to do it afraid. So thank you so much, Dr. Davis.
Let me just say this to you, Summer, is that, and as I age, I'm writing like a little memoir that's just for me, and it's in chapters, and I describe my life now. My time in life now is chapter 3, you know, because you get 10. So from 70 and on, chapter 3. And so what I find is that it can become a little lonely because, you know, you have friends down, family down. So what I end up doing is being inspired by people like you, and there are a couple of young, particularly African-American women psychologists, and but men too, but and young, I am inspired. So, you know, I would tell people who were managers, manage up, manage down, manage sideways. But for young people, for people like you, that you're inspiring up, down, and sideways. So for your peers, for those following you, and for those of us who have gone on ahead of you. So keep doing that.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. This has been an honor and a privilege and a pleasure. And I'm just honored that when I met you, I got to look up to you, and I still do, but I'm even more honored now that I feel like I can call you my friend. Thank you.
So you can call me Rosie.
I don't know that I could ever call you that.
It's not gonna happen, but you certainly have my permission. I get it. Yeah.
Thank you. I love you so much.
Love you too, Summer. Okay. Thank you. Bye.